will be looking at each textile sample, and we will be understanding not just the looms but also dyes. So, I will be today talking about dyes, patterning with dyes and the different techniques that are associated with it. But how do we deconstruct a textile? Yesterday I spoke of deconstructing it materially, right? And I gave you a whole systems of entire bunch of science and technologies how to say it. So, today we will be looking at each piece as a representative of loom, dyes, dye processes, technologies, design templates, region, community of weavers, dyers, printers, painters, washermen, etc. We will look at each piece in terms of material, processes, loom, usages and aesthetics, very important. Tactility of the cloth is important because it touches our skin and therefore it has to be comfortable. Visuality is important because it is seen and for its colors, design and aesthetics. The sample has to be seen, touched and felt by all of you. Okay. Now, how are we going about it? We have the sample's name, we will give the provenance, that is area or areas of production, how old and which century approximately, what kind of looms, dyes, what kind of dyes and the processes associated, the fibers, the threads, the techniques, for example, the fekwa, katarwa, rafugar for Kashmiri embroidery and so on, and surface embellishments, on-loom embroidery like kani, brocade, and off-loom embroidery, printed zardozi, cutwork and applique. Today just we will speak of dyes initially because we do have printed and painted fabrics in our country. So, these are off-loom embellishments. Yesterday we did not talk about them, today we will complete the entire picture. So, dyeing process is mordant and resist of fixing yarn color to the yarn and cloth. There are two stages in the weaving process where color is fixed to the fiber, that is yarn itself, like we just saw in the patola, that is you fix the color and the pattern to the yarn. Then you have which is done to the cloth, which is once it is woven it comes off the loom. There are multiple processes used to fix the dye to the yarn and the cloth, mordant and resist. How do you get this cloth? It is not like you take the yarn or the cloth and just dip it in a dye, it does not fix. Like for some fibers and nature of materiality of the fibers itself determines how easily they are able to absorb color. Cotton is difficult, you have to prepare the fiber to accept color. Wool and silk are more easily colored. So, therefore, for cotton you have to prepare the cloth, and this is done by having mordants, that is metallic salts that are used that help in the fixing of color. For example, red dye, to fix red dye color, alum is used, it is a metallic salt. Alum or fitkari. Resist, the area that is not to be colored, as you saw in the film just now, what is not to, and what I had mentioned yesterday also, what is not to be colored is tied, is closed, so that it does not accept the color which is of the neighboring area. Cotton threads are tied liquid like we saw in Patola, like we saw in our Bandhani, Rajasthan. Liquid wax and mud are also applied. These are the other resist mechanisms. Cloth we have where we use these methods are, you have Dabu which is mud resist and tie-dye of Gujarat and Rajasthan. Yarn is dyed according to the pattern through the method of mordant and resist. The film only showed the resist, it did not show, we were not able to see is rest of the film where there is mordanting, that is how we are preparing specific areas through these metallic salts so that color is absorbed very easily. The technique is called ikat. It is considered to have magical properties due to the patterning of the yarn itself. It was easier for communities across the world to accept cloth to be dyed, but to have that on the yarn itself, the pattern to be on the yarn itself was magical, and it is across the world. That is why ikat across the world, where the single ikat or double ikat is so much valued. Modern metallic salts that help to absorb dyes, fitkari and alum, it is areas applied with alum absorb alizarin dye, red dye when put in the dye bath. Natural dyes were made and used like black for kasimi, Okay. Natural dyes were made and used like black kasimi, including for a patola, which is made from fermented iron, jaggery, waste iron that you have, that is iron pieces that are lying around, red from che, madder, al, etc. Indigo from Tephrosia purpurea and other varieties of that particular plant. Making of the dyes using natural resources, typically they are ground and they are boiled and that is how they are made. Today replaced by chemical powders. Fixing of colors and patterns through techniques, block printing, tie dyeing like Rajasthan, hand painted like our kalamkari, including our Matani Pachedi, the cloth of the goddess, and just by simple dyeing. Each region has developed its own set of identity markers. There were patterns, colors, aesthetics. Ajrakh, Bagh, Dabu, Bagru, Sanganer, and chains have distinctive aesthetics, patterns, and colors that identify them. Block printing, Gujarat block printing is an old and continuing tradition. It is traded both west and east. In Fustat, Egypt, they were block printed fragments of Gujarat coarse cloth. This is about 14th century common era. This is a coarse cotton cloth which is block printed and which is found in the garbage dump of Fustat city near Cairo, near in Egypt. There are many more fragments that have been found. This is another one. Please note the trefoil pattern. We have only partly visible. This is a very common pattern which is even used in prints that were exported to Southeast Asia. We have the bust of the priest, Mohenjo-daro priest, which had the trefoil pattern that we saw yesterday. Now, Southeast Asia also we had, 15th century. This is what went to Southeast Asia. Look at these incredible figures. There were other figures like this, figurative blocks that were sent. And these are much valued in Southeast Asia. I'm showing these figures because these are unusual. And besides just the regular prints that you have, these went to Southeast Asia. Now, block printing is off-loom embellishment on cloth. Yesterday I mentioned the different sets of science and technology. The first set is that of wooden block making. That is patterned wooden block making. I am not going into major details. I'll just use the keystone, just the touch, major points I will touch. Wooden blocks that have patterns incised on them. There is a science and technology on block making. You have specific kinds of wood only are used. You have specific set of implements that are used to incise the pattern. There are basically two kinds of blocks. Gad is something which is the outline, and that is one big block. This is a Dabu block actually, and we have then the other detailed blocks that you have, that is within the outline, how much of detailing you want as well as how much of color that you want. We have that is called as rake. We typically have only one or two rake pieces because the more detailing you do, the more complex it gets in terms of managing the colors, in terms of managing the dyeing process. So, we have the process of printing, preparation. Now we have come to the cloth. It is how do you prepare the cloth to receive the dye? Cotton fibers have to be prepared to absorb the dye. Bleaching the cloth is the first thing, and this cloth is soaked in cold water, and then it is soaked for a long time, and then it is beaten like the washerman beats on the stone, and the impurities are removed. Then the cloth is treated with dung. Dung would vary. Methods would vary. You can have a sheep dung for camel dung for Ajrakh. You can have sheep dung for kalamkari. You can and cow dung and buffalo dung you can have, and you can also have goat dung for dabu. So you have different kinds of dungs that are available in different places that are used, and at some places you even have oil that is mixed, castor oil or any other oil that is there. Like for Tilia Rumal, you have til oil, sesame oil that is used. So this is to make the fibers soft and absorbent to receive the dye. Now we have seen how it is, printing has to be done, and it is done over successive stages. First black outline is put, and then you have different colors. So when you're going to put a red color, you're going to have a paste of alum and lime and so on, and which is then printed. The block is absorbs the color and it is printed, and then the cloth is boiled in alizarin dye bath, and the areas that are covered with alum become red. So repeated washing, repeated sun drying is essential. Without repeated sun drying, without having free flowing water, so when you, after each time you put it in a dye bath and you take it out, you have to put it out in the sun, and you have to wash it also, because the excess dye has to be discharged. Only what is required will remain in the cloth, excess dye. Just that's why you need flowing water, so the dye does not stay down in the, on the floor, on the bed of the river, but it flows away. So resist I've already mentioned. Now there are different methods, like mixture of lime and gum arabica is used in Ajrakh. Mud from river tanks is used in Dabo and Rajasthan. This is Ajrakh that we have. This is a contemporary piece that we have of Ajrakh. Again, please note that this is the trefoil motif they have picked up from the trade cloths that went to Southeast Asia and to the Gulf, to Cairo. The picture is not too good, and because it was this is photographed in not very good conditions. So each tradition is associated with, you know, with the specific place and design vocabulary, aesthetics and set of process. Ajrak design vocabulary, colors. I'll show you the piece now. Please come, one of you. Uh, Please handle all of this. Check. Open it up. Okay. I'll be speaking so that you can have a look at it. This particular piece is silk, of course, and if you notice, the color is indigo and madder, and then you have black. These are, now you can touch it and see, and please circulate it, and it can go. You can sit it, you can spread it there and sit. All of you please come and touch it and see. I'll be talking about it. So this particular design vocabulary and colors, Ajrakh is made typically like this. You have a specific design vocabulary and pardon? No, this is not mushroom silk, but now they are making in mushroom silk also. Please come down, or because you, all of you will be touching it. This is simply mulberry silk. Typically this is done, and the reason I brought this also is that Ajrakh has basically two colors. One is blue, the other is red. Blue is associated with summer, and red is associated with winter. So you have the Maldhari shepherds and so on, typical. So they would have two sets made, one with the blue and the other with the red. So those guys will, with the, they'll have the turban, and then the long cloth which is used as a turban and as a shawl or whatever is covering, and then they have the lungi, the lower cloth that they wear. So in fact, earlier what they used to do was, they used to do one, dye one side in blue and the other side in red. All this was in cotton, thick cotton, handloom cotton. So when winter came, he'll put on the red side out, and when summer came, he'll put the blue side out. So it was meant to kept cool. And back then, we had dyes, organic dyes that we use, natural dyes which are healthy. Indigo, you know, from Tephrosia purpurea and other plants of that name, of that species. And we had red from madder, manjeet. So they were all very healthy and very, you know, very good. So these are the two colors, dhoop chhaw they call it, but these are the two colors that were commonly used. So the moment you see this, you say this is Ajrakh. Today there is a lot of mix and match. So Ajrakh actually came from Sindh, Gujarat, today's Gujarat, and back then Sindh, they were all contiguous areas. But the people who do this work, they say we came from Sindh and to Gujarat for whatever reasons, and some went to Rajasthan and some are here in uh, Dhamadka in Gujarat. Now they have gone and formed a new place called Ajrakhpur, and that's because of water. In Dhamarka, water had dried up because of irrigation through tube wells and so on. So they went and looked for a newer place, a newer village called, they named it Ajrakhpur, where they pump out water and they do the traditional. The river has run dry. The small rivulet that was going and had sustained them had run dry because over harvesting of the water. So, or provenance, a specific process, there is a and a specific design vocabulary. You have beautiful designs in this, uh, which distinguish who wears what in that area. We also have the other set of block printing is that of, this is Bagh. Okay, there are only two. Bagh is in Madhya Pradesh. They too say that they also came from Sindh and so on, and they migrated for famine or persecution and so on. This is its design, two color palette. That's a white three color palette. That is a, yesterday we spoke of how bleaching was perfected and all that. That's because the color white is a color of the cloth. So if you do not bleach the cloth properly and you don't remove its impurities, then it will be muddy and all that. That white, the color of the cloth becomes like a color like red and black. So it transforms through bleaching process into a white color. Not a white cloth, but a white color. So bleaching gives that notion of color to this. So it has red, which is again made traditionally from madder and majit and so on, or al, whatever red natural sources that were available. So, and black came from Cassini, that I have mentioned, from fermented iron. In some places sugarcane jaggery is used, in some places palm jaggery is used, but this is the color palette vocabulary. They fortunately have not yet altered this color palette. This has still continued. So this is Bagh. In Ajrakh, and we are finding newer colors. What we saw in Patola, we are finding newer designs and newer colors, but that is, times that of today. Now, blocks are common in both Bagh and Ajrakh, as well as in Machilipatnam Kalamkari. We will come to that. Now, there is an interdependence of communities, printers, weavers, suppliers of materials, such as dung. How will you get dung? So, the camel herders and the printers, Ajrakh printers, have a synergy, have a symbiotic relationship. They wait for those camel herders to bring their dung, and then they will make clothing for the camel herders. You see? So there is or the cloth suppliers, weavers whom they get, they'll make the clothing for them, printed and given. So there is a good synergy there. Dabo is in Rajasthan, and mud from tanks is used as resist. This is Ajrakh's. This on the left side is the block, on the right side is the design. The process, the first process they have done is they have washed it. You see the water body there at the back, and you see this plain field. For block printing to be done, you need spaces, you need facilities. So water bodies, you have banks where you can dry these cloth. On this side is hara. Again, a natural tannin agent. This is this is a fruit of Terminalia chabula, which grows wild in the central Indian forest and has a pretty fairly widespread. It has numerous properties, but here it is ground, powdered and boiled. This is hara or harada that you call, and the cloth gets a little yellowish tinge, and it prepares the cloth to receive the dye and also to soften the fibers. On your this side you have camel dung. Here you have, uh, this is in Ajrakh port, where because of water shortage, you have tanks that have been built. You see a series of tanks. You can see water flowing from the top tank to below and to below, and finally it is discharged, and cloths are being washed. So this is an imitation of flowing water, where cloth is boiled or boiled and dipped in color. It's all, you have these copper vessels that are used both for Ajrak and also for Dabu, and you have that bhatti, the furnace, and you have these huge copper pots which are sunk into the, on the top you have fire here. Here on top sits a huge vessel, a copper vessel typically, because copper does not react to these dyes, whether natural or chemical. So, and this is where they are dyeing, putting the printed patterned cloths. This is an indigo dye what. They fold the cloth and then they dip it in and take it out, and dip it in and take it out. So there's a process for that. I spoke of mud resist dabu. Here you have mud that is there. It is with lime, and it's made into a fine paste. The block is dipped in the paste and it is printed. So that becomes a resist. Then this cloth is taken and dipped in indigo dye vat. So rest of the surrounding area is all indigo, except the area you see this white, that is where you had a patterned it with mud, gum arabica and lime, paste. So that is your pattern. So the white of the cloth, that is the bleaching is important. It becomes a color here, not just as a white cloth, but becomes a color. This too is dabu. This is the red dabu that they call, but just a variation in terms of color patterns and so on. We have Chins Kalamkari. This is Coromandel Coast. India was very much famous for this. It went everywhere, east, west, and so on. It was from east, it went to South Asia, and from there it was traded to Japan and Philippines and so on. It went to Persia and Europe, and from Europe it was traded to USA. It was used both as furnishing as well as for clothing. Now, this is still an old and continuing practice in Coromandel Coast in South India. Machilipatnam in Andhra Pradesh is the northernmost practice, and Tanjavur in Tamil Nadu was its southernmost region. That is the range that it had. And there were other centers like Palakollu and others, and Pulikat along the coast, but that is the range. The process is modern and resist, and use of full fat buffalo milk, which enabled the cloth to absorb color and to soften it. Okay. It was originally hand painted. In the first tradition was that it was hand painted. I brought yardage sample. This is from Machilipatnam. This particular thing was called as chins. Okay. This is of course modern, and of course this is chemical, but in different designs I will show you, different designs where different patterns for Southeast Asia and for Persia and for USA were sent. So the process of printing is similar. Again, blocks were made. Now block making tradition here in Machilipatnam came only in 17th century, and this was because they were making for Persian markets. That is, the Golconda Sultanate had very close link with Persian royalty and Persian kingdom. So there was yesterday I spoke about the political and economic angle as embedded in the textile. So because of that courtly linkages, a trade was there. These cloths were exported there according to their designs. So they had a tradition. Persia had a tradition of, they called as ghalamkars and so on, and artisans they came down with their designs like Jainamas, prayer mats, and they brought their blocks. So that is how block printing came to Machilipatnam in South India. It didn't come from Gujarat. but it came from Persia. And then, uh, but the hand painting still continued. It did not disappear. This is a Persian Ghalamkari piece. I just brought this to show you. You will see a similarity in terms of the booties that you have, the mango booties. This is some Persian Mela happened in Delhi. So I went and got this as a sample. Now for both hand painted and block printed kalamkari, that is both these kinds of prints and as well as the mythological narratives is the same. This is actually designed, this is in Rijksmuseum in Netherlands. This is a lady's coat, but notice the pattern. It is like, it is just perfectly done. There is a perfect symmetry. And this happened because they sent the cut pattern of the coat to Machilipatnam and they said design so that a design sits perfectly on this. So if you look closely, there are very minor flaws. So, you know, where you do the stitching and so on, it looks perfectly symmetrical. Yesterday I mentioned about the Getwa loom doing Namavali according to the cut pattern of, you know, the client's measurement and how the Namali, the holy names were woven on that according to the size of the customer. We have a similar situation here too. This is very common because they were really appreciating chins. They called it sits. This is a wall hanging that was commissioned by Europeans. This is another pattern. This is a natural color which is much light. So you see a design repertoire of chins is emerging. This is a painting of a lady wearing chins. She's a British lady. Look at the off-white. So you had preferences of different regions had their own preferences. An off-white background with red. Some had, you know, the red background with, you know, different color designs. This is a long coat which people, and inside that a smaller coat which is worn. So these were all, these are details of you know, designs. This is a Persian market. This is the mihrab. This is a mihrab. This is used as a prayer mat actually, and also as a hanging. It can used in both ways. And this particular is called as the pandu. This, you have peacocks here and you have the tree of life. Again, this is, I'm sorry for the poor quality of this because I had to photograph it in not very good conditions. So these were exported to Persia, and this is how the Persian, this thing where you have that booty coming in and all that is. This is for the Persian market. There at the bottom of it is a hanging. At the bottom there is an you know, torn out Islamic script. So we don't know what it was. I want to highlight here how complicated it is. It is both hand block printed and also hand painted. Okay, this is the gad that you would call the outline, but you have these details that are hand painted. You see how many details are there. This is about just about 6 inches in height, 6 to 8 inches in height, this entire this gad, that is all. But you see these details, you have these you know, booties which are very similar to our Persian booties. You have multiple booties, you have peacocks here, you have peacocks, then you have here, you have a flower there, and you have here details which is not possible with block prints. You can see even more within this, you have all these details, a smaller booty, mango booty further down. The peacocks that I had mentioned earlier are here, and you see the details of this. This is a particular flower motif that you find even in Kashmiri Kani embroidery and Kani weaving shawl. So when you have so much of detail, then it is not possible just with blocks. a lot of hand painting was also there. And this continued even during the British times. And they were really astonished as to what is, the extent that these craftspeople could do it. Now, tie-dye is Gujarat, Rajasthan, and Madurai. As I mentioned, okay. Before I come to that, I just want to show you the figurative. You can smell the buffalo fat on this. This is a present day dupatta, kalamkari, that is, look at it in terms of the narrative, mythological stories, narratives. If you smell this, you will have a smell that is a buffalo fat. You have here Ram Darbar, that is the coronation of Rama Sita. This is all hand drawn. This contemporary, earlier we never had these on clothes that one would wear, but they were used as displays, and bards would narrate the stories. They were used for a lot of purposes, but never for clothing. But today you have, this has transformed into clothing item, where even the stories that were written on the panels are written actually in Telugu language script on this. So you find this beautiful aesthetics of floral and birds. Here I think only florals. This material is Mangalagiri dupatta, cotton, and on which this is again a post-loom embellishment. So, and then they would have drawn. There are two basic colors, the white, three basic colors, white of the cloth, red from alizarin and black from Kasimi. That's the design palette. So we come to now the tie-dye resist, which is Gujarat, Rajasthan, Madurai. Yesterday we saw Pulakabandha in Gupta period. We saw the images of that. That has continued and it has spread wide. But Gujarat and Rajasthan are well known for that. Now, people from Saurashtra migrated during the Tanjore, Maratha Tanjore rule in 17th century or so. They migrated down and they carried their tradition of tie dyeing, and there it is called as, in Madurai it is called as Sungri. Areas that you want not to be colored are tied with cotton thread, thick cotton thread are tied. It's the same principle that we saw as in Patola, except that here they use the nail of their small little finger, or at times they use a particular implement. If you're doing very fine dots, they use a fine iron or whatever, just to have that, get that right dimension. So we see how the migration of an art has happened. This is a sample of tie-dye. This is a gharchola. This is a post-loom. So the original cloth has been woven with these squares. So there is a zari and you have a fixed space where you can do your design by tie-dyeing. Okay. Now you see how much of design has been done, the kinds of patterns that have been done, right? The bigger the area that is tie-dyed, it's considered to be coarse. The smaller the dot, it is considered to be very fine. So Gujarat is supposed to have the finest because it does very fine dots, whereas Rajasthan does, bigger dots. This is from Apna Gujarat. Where are we with our samples? No, I mean seeing. Acha, that is now being circulated. Okay. No, fine. Keep it there. Keep it there. I just want to know what was being circulated. We come to ikat. This was practiced in 4 different regions of the country. Gujarat, that is Patan, Andhra Pradesh, that is Chirala on the coastal side, and Telengana, that is the Pochampalli region, very close to Hyderabad. Odisha, Sambhalpur, Noapattna region. Now this tie-dyeing I want to mention here is that we saw in the film Mr. Salvi mentioning that they came from Jalna. Now back then, there are 2 things that you have to understand. This Jalna is close to, is in center, is Maharashtra, very close to Aurangabad, you know, that side where could have been a part of Nizam's dominions in the medieval era. They were all these shifting, you know, nebulous peripheries actually. Now, the name Salvi of the weaving community is also very similar to the caste name of weavers in South India called Sali. Now you have Padmasali who do the regular cotton weaving, and you have the Pattu Sali. Pattu means silk. So Pattu Salis are those who do the silk weaving. Okay. Now tradition has it, Lord, because the Salis are very, very skilled. In Kerala also you have the weavers called as Saliye. So you have a common name, caste name that is going Sali, Sale or Salvi. The theory is that, one theory is that these were actually people who went from Andhra Pradesh, who migrated. Andhra Pradesh is very well known for its weaving skills, especially cotton weaving skills and so on. So there is a theory about it that, you know, these are the people who went and who migrated and all that. There's been a lot of migration and cross migration of weavers across South India, across central, you know, up to, because they were all similar kingdoms with Satvahana, you know, this, that, right from ancient times to so on. See, empires may change, but people will continue to do their work. They'll carry their work elsewhere. More people will come in. So this is how our textile and craft traditions expand, prosper. If something dies in one place, you know, a migrant elsewhere will pick it up and things like that. So the pattern and colors are put on the yarn itself through dye, resist and modern processes. This is a family thing. What we saw was the tying, dyeing. We didn't see the dyeing process. The wife, the women folk typically do the dyeing. They also do the warping and wefting, preparing the yarn. The patterning is done by the making the figure, the naksha is done by the, map is done by the men, and then they do the weaving. Now in Patola, what we saw was that was the yarn is slanted, the beam is slanted, the loom is slanted at 30 degrees angle, and where the weaver is sitting, the main weaver, the loom is slanted, tilted to his side. The two will sit. We just saw Rahul next to his father's Kame Salvi. Kame Salvi is weaving and Rahul will be sitting on the right. Now, it is such mathematical precision that both warp and weft have designs have to sit perfectly. You saw he had those metal prongs that he was, you know, doing. That is, he's adjusting and aligning the threads. That is done only there. The same patola is woven in Pochampalli, Andhra Pradesh, in Telengana, but they use a normal pit loom and they don't use this particular implement, but they also have a very good double ekat. Patan patola was exported to Southeast Asia, and at least it's been there for 12th to 14th century, and it is considered holy and having magical properties. This is an image from a book. You see the shoulder cloths. It was so much prized. These are the shoulder cloths, like today's stoles that you can have, and these were important for every ritual, for every major ritual. They had to have it. So you have the women in Indonesia wearing these. These are some of the cloths that were, they're part of their heirlooms, which they would use. They also made trousers for the men. So you have the local kings and queens. The kings having, you have sitting against a backdrop like this. This is a hanging which they will hang at the back, and they will dress themselves up, in the coats and trousers, their coats, their trousers, and these women with their shoulder cloths. And if you had a patola like this, you have arrived. Your status shoots up, and it is considered magical more than anything else. It was considered magical and holy. Like I said, you having it, with you, the magic of patterning and coloring, the yarn itself was magical, and the magic when you're weaving, the pattern comes alive. This is actually a template of Patola, Patan Patola. Okay. If one were to see this, it has the same elephants and it also has popots, part of its design vocabulary. This is a Ghatchola of Gujarat. Now, if this is a weft ikat, it's a single ikat. If you had a double ikat, that is this warp also done, then it will be a double ikat, that will be the proper pattern patola. But today, because of, like we saw in the film, you had very few weavers and this craft was in danger of dying out. So, one of the Salvi brothers, he went to Rajkot and he took it out of his family and he trained other weavers and he made it into single ikat, which meant that there was faster production and that there was a continuity of the craft itself. So, weft is like this. You will see carefully the threads, colored threads are going like this, these colors. They are not going like this, but like this. This is the weft ikat. Please have a look. We come to ikat, that is Odisha Sambalpur. Sambalpur is in Patna, Odisha, at least about 15th century of common era. Meher weaving community. They use the pitloom. Dyes, traditional, natural and modern are chemical. It's the same process of dyeing, tie, dye, resist, mordant. Threads are both cotton and silk. They do both single and double ikat. The highlight of this is writing in Odia and Devanagari script. You have heard of Jagannath in Puri. Every day, Jagannath, all the three idols are clothed in a certain set of clothing. They'll also color coded. One day is of one color, the other day is of another color, and so on. But there is one piece where Gita Govinda verses are woven in Odia script. That is unique to Odisha. We do not have writing being woven anywhere else, whether it is in Telengana or Chirala or even in Patan. We do not have that. We have it only in Sambalpur, Odisha. This is a very interesting piece and again unique only to that place. It's made in very limited quantities. This is tantric magical of a different kind. This, if you see, this has writing both Devanagari and Odia script. There are also entwined snakes, that is the other motif that is part of this particular sari. This is called as Tantra Bandha, Naga Bandha sari. Bandhodaya is binding, Bandha means binding, Bandhodaya is the process. Naga Bandha is because in addition to this lotus, you have a snake also with all symbols and all bija aksharas. Bija akshara is energized letters. No? Reportedly, this is meant as that two lovers. The lover one lover has to decode what is the poem that is written on this. So I do not have that piece. This piece is from the Crafts Museum. So you see what are the possibilities. You are seeing same ikat. You are seeing what is the possibility in one place, what is the possibility in another place. How are you extending the range? Each area has owned it and is expanding it. I'll show you. This is the Sambalpuri ikat now. This too is a single ikat. This is a weft ikat. This particular piece is a chalk. It is considered to be holy. Chalk, this is this particular thing is done or as a floor art. So this is, if you notice, the threads move. Okay, this is weft ikat, and this side is also weft ikat. No, sorry, this side is warp, this side is weft. come and have a look. The border is what it moves this side. This side it is palla is weft. The temples that you see here is where this border is joining the cloth, is the rest of the body. This is termed as zameen. Okay, this. The reason I am showing you saris is because there is a huge diversity in saris where a craft has been extended enormously. The same loom weaves the sari, the same loom also weaves the men's dhotis. But men's dhotis are not this colorful, they are fairly simple, they are very simple and very basic. But the range extension and all the combinations, permutations we find in saris. That is the reason why we have so many saris. Now, in Telia Rumal, this is another double ikat tradition. Originally, it was in Chirala. So, if people were to ask, where did ikat originate? Was it Andhra? Was it good? Now, they of course they have said it is central, India, Jalna, or whether it is Odisha. We really don't know, but likely it was in Andhra Pradesh. Likely. Now, Andhra Pradesh, there is very well-known tradition of Telia Rumal. It is double ikat, and it is very mathematical and very geometrical. Chirala is in the coastal area of Andhra Pradesh, and it has a specific design vocabulary. Till 20th century onwards, it fairly up to early 20th century, it was known as Asia Rumal, and it was exported to South Asia like Burma, and South. It went to the Gulf and so on, and this came to Telangana sometime in 1930s or so, because trade orders, outside orders were so much that the Chirala weavers couldn't handle it. So they sent two of their people to this Telangana area near Pochampally, where they said, if they could train and if weavers are willing, because it's a complicated weave, so and process. So if they were willing to do it, and in one village they found success, and that is how this Telia Rumal migrated from Chirala, Andhra Pradesh to present day Telangana in near Hyderabad, Pochampally region. Okay. From 1960s, so that is one vocabulary that we have. Then of course we have for this particular Telia Rumal, normal pit loom is used, nothing fanciful, nothing like the slanted loom of the Patola. It is interesting that of all these ikat regions, it is only Patola which has its slant loom, slant loom. Okay, I will show you now Telia Rumal. This was the process of, very interesting. This is today 45 or 45. Earlier it was woven in little smaller dimensions. This used to have an oily sheen. That is because they were using castor or sesame oil to do, and also sheep dung to cure and all. It was a very long process. The process, again, tie-dye and modern resist methods that we had, but this had an oily sheen, which actually made it thermally empowered cloth. Like in summers it will keep you cool, in winters it will keep you warm. This is used by labor in the region. It is also used by Goan fishermen. There is a particular style of tying this which the Goan fishermen did. It's designed, this is like Patan Patola, which we heard, he said, most complicated. This is the other most complicated. The designs are all geometric, absolutely mathematical. You cannot have a circle in this, but that was beaten by Rakesh Thakur when he did do a circle, but that was a one-off effort. But otherwise you have only these kind of designs. everything is precision, everything is calculated. The design vocabulary is limited in this because of the calculation, the nature of this particular weaving, you can only do certain kinds of designs. You cannot have any design that you want because it has to sit within its calculation and its framework. In Hyderabad, what happened subsequently was this began to be woven like dupattas, and they were further embroidered and they were worn, that was called as Janani, about 7 meters or so, and they were worn by the royal women and elite women in Hyderabad during Nizam's time. This almost went out of practice because trade sometime in 50s or so, trade orders had stopped. You see, any craft can exist only if there is a market for it, whether it is your traditional local market or whether it is a modern market and so on. So in the 1950s, Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay, she went and then she persuaded weavers of Pochampalli to weave a sari and so on, gave some advance of her own money and things like that. So and it continued. So Festival of Indias came up and then they gave a further fillip and so on. The weavers are Padmasalis for this. Now I spoke about the Patola being woven, that design repertoire being woven in Telengana region, again Pochampalli region. You see, there was a tradition of ikat weaving through Telia Rumal by 1930s or so. Okay. So there was already a tradition of ikat weaving in a region. Now we do not know how or why, but we find that this kind of weaving, you see the similarity between Patola and this is Pochampalli ikat. This is done in both single ikat and double ikat. Traditional Patola, Patan Patola is also woven in Pochampalli area in both single and double, and that is also as good as your original Patan Patola. Chemical colors are used, not natural colors, but in terms of weaving quality, it is a very close match, and that is woven on the normal pit loom. So you see, the same cloth, I really wonder, the same weaving that you have is done, one is done on a slant loom, the other is done on a regular loom. So that is a thought that we really need to look into as to how is it possible, whether there is a really huge qualitative difference or what. This is again a weft ticker. Please see the motifs, the geese. Yesterday I had mentioned geese were a very popular motif. Here this particular piece has geese and it of course also has elephants. Similar kind of a repertoire is also produced in Nuapatna in Sambhalpur. I haven't brought that particular sari, but similar that kind of a repertoire also exists. So we now know ikat, the kind of range that is possible. Ikat in the Telangana region is also woven as daily wear. You have cotton saris, both regular and mercerized. So it is both warp and weft, both are done. In textiles, we will find that in some places, maybe in a border you will have a warp ikat, but maybe in the body you will have a weft ikat, maybe in the pallu you might have a weft ikat. So double ikat means, does not just necessarily mean both of them coming together in one design only, but there could be certain sections of the sari or the cloth which has different warp and weft. Now we come to the brocade patching. This is Pratisthana. You had Jalna Patola, very close by you had Patni. Pathan or Pratisthana in ancient times was a very well known center for brocade weaving. That is, back then it was cotton. Yesterday I mentioned how Roman brides waited for these brocade cloths to come so that they could wear them and get married. Now, this is a very intricate weave, and for this pit loom, which is counterbalanced, is used. It is double interlocking tapestry weave. When it migrated to Yevla, it was just a chatai weave. It wasn't, the complexity had gone down there. Now, border and pallu are woven separately and then they are attached to the main body. It's a 3 shuttle loom, and I had mentioned yesterday that because of the royal, the political aspect impacts the craft also. This became, in medieval times, Marathas adopted this. So their royal women, they began wearing pathani saris, 9 yard pathani saris, and when they expanded their kingdom, this particular craft went along. You had Baroda, it went to Chanderi, then it even went to Varanasi, and it also went to Ahmedabad. Then in south again, it went to Kotakota, that is in Mehboob region. So in Chanderi area region, earlier it was also very well known center for cotton weaving. Throw shuttle pit loom, that was either counterbalanced, but now fly shuttle pit loom, that is counterbalanced with jala attachment, is used. This is the patterning slide that I showed yesterday. Today you will see this particular sari. It's almost like a painting. Now this particular is in double twill interlock tapestry weave. This is woven separately, the border is woven separately, and then it is attached to this border. Now this particular technique and this particular way, this is the most complicated, and typically they weave this first. Once this is woven, your major work is over, because then this is, you're looking at a simpler weaving. I am introducing a new concept. You see these booties, this is all patterned. The zameen, the field, the body is patterned with small floral booties. Now, we saw yesterday the jala attachment, where I said, warp threads are lifted specifically so that this is the extra weft that has to be inserted. Now, wherever it is necessary, warp threads only of that area are lifted. Thread is lifted here, then a new thread, supplementary weft thread is introduced, and this booty is woven and it ends here. Then for the next booty, fresh thread is introduced, the booty is woven and it ends here. This particular system is called as discontinuous weft, supplementary weft patterning. You see on the reverse, there is nothing, everything is the same as in the front. This concept was important because when you are looking at other brocades, innovations that came in subsequently, those will be highlighted. Okay, have a look. This particular, just hold this particular way where the backdrop is, this is, you would call it as kimkha, where yesterday I had mentioned that you will have, extra zari patterning. Against this you have these colors. So it is also called as enameling. Enameling that you have in Rajasthan jewelry, that you have enameling and meenakari, it's the same principle, is also used in textiles. Now we come to Banarsi brocade. It was a well-known cotton weaving center, and silk came only in the 18th century. Now because of widespread availability of mulberry silk, silk weaving became much more common. All kinds of looms exist in Banaras because the Gujarati weavers have migrated and taken their looms. other weavers, nearby. It has had, because there was continuous trade, so there was continuous livelihood opportunities available, and they were very proficient in capitalizing new technologies, innovations, whether it came from bulk in Uzbekistan and Bukhara, and or else the Persian Rock. They picked up all kinds of technologies. There was space for all of these people. So Gatwa loom, like I mentioned yesterday, the Namavali. Now Jala attached loom that produced figured cloths, including brocade, too existed and still exists. Besides, you have regular looms that produce regular cloths. The modern jacquard loom will also exist. So on the one hand, you'll have the Gatwa loom, which has now been revived, and now you'll also have the modern jacquard loom. Okay, kimkhab. Yesterday I showed you an image of kimkhab, yasser too, and brocade with zari and silk existed. These are some of the, this is your shikargar brocade. This is also your lion, and this is a beautiful sari with konias. These booties are called as konias. That is a konia. You see at the edge, that is a konia. This is the palla and this is the field, and you have just a small square on both the places, and you have a beautiful konia. This is your arm booty, which you later on Kashmiri paste and French paisley. This is our brocade that I mentioned, that we saw yesterday, and today we will see it in a, this is a wedding brocade. This is a satin base, and this is just zari, and you have these booties, you have these arm booties. We have saw these in the konya there, you have, it's a very typical. Now, we spoke of discontinued supplementary weft patterning. Now that, when demand came up, that became a problem. Earlier all booties were woven like that, but because of production, in a slow production, an innovation was made, which is called as Fekwa. Fekwa meant, I just showed you Patni sari, where you did not find any of this. Each booty was individual, singular. This speeded up. This innovation happened because this is a selvage, edge to edge. Now, instead of just lifting the warp, inserting a fresh supplementary weft thread at every point, what they did was, they began, fekwa means throwing. They began throwing the weft, supplementary weft, from selvage to selvage. Selvage are the edges. This is the selvage. This is selvage, this is a selvage. From selvage to selvage. This considerably is the weaving. This happened, this innovation happened in 1950, and this kind of weaving is called as fekwa. So, but the thing was, you had these threads between two booties. Now, if you are using a tissue sari or a fine sari, then these will be an eyesore, it will take away the beauty. So, a solution was evolved. K.G. Subramaniam, the famous artist, he was with the Weaver Service Center in Varanasi. He figured out, what he did was, you cut off the threads between two booties on the back. That is called as katarwa. So, the weaver sells it as it is to the gaddewala. Once a sale is confirmed, then the gaddewala gets a person to cut it, which means katarwa. So, the person will then sit and cut it. Now, this has is a huge innovation in terms of in keeping this tradition alive, which enabled faster production of these brocades. That's an innovation, Fekwa and Katarwa. This is another kind of brocade. almost like kinka. You have to see. We saw images like this, a lot of this yesterday, right? Men's jamas were woven in 4 meters long strips, thans, and they were patterned. Here, of course, there are a lot more, but they were patterned somewhat similar. Against this gold background, you will have this delicate sprig, you know. These were done in the royal karkhanas because the royalty had to wear beautiful jamas, which you'll find in miniature paintings, and you'll also find in museums. You know, when we go to Calico Museum, I'm sure they'll be having, you know, examples like this. So this particular piece symbolizes many dimensions of brocade. One is the men's this thing. The second is that you have this particular design. This is a design vocabulary. This also has this. The border, this is leher. This is the leher. This too is another leher. So again, garments could be made just with this than that is woven. If you remove the border, visualize it as like just a piece of fabric, and this was sewn as men's garments. This was done similarly with this that was done, not this closely spaced motifs, but distantly placed motifs. So you have in this not just a sari, but a multiple designs that you have, and you this too. This is almost like a tissue, and I would also like you to notice that at the back you have these colors that are there, just this color here, which is here, and then it is here again a part of the bud. The bud has two colors, a green and a brown. You see how threads are moving. The green here is moving. Look at the threads that are there at the back. So when you see textile, you have to see the front and the back. That will tell you how it is woven, the technique. Time. I'll take, yeah, I'll do that. This is Amru. Amru or Tanchoi. Yesterday I mentioned Tanchoi. This is brocade, silk on silk. Silk threads are used here, and if you have to note, see this very carefully. This is again multiple weft, so much so that you will not, and it is so densely packed that you will not find any loose threads anywhere at the back because it is so densely packed with design. You will find the same design at the back too. Okay. This came from China. We do not know what looms they used, but definitely this has now been adopted by the Varanasi weavers. This is from Kanchipuram. I had mentioned that how the three shuttle, how it is used to weave the border separately, the palla separately. It is the same technique. This is called as koravai. Similar technique is there used in Gadwal and Telengana region, which is called as Kuppadam and Adai. So you can see how you have threads here. That is a sign that this is a true kanchi, and woven three shuttle where the body is attached to the border. You can find that if you touch it and feel, you can see that there are small holes, small gaps, which means that the border is attached separately, and when the pallu is attached, these threads are at the back. I am showing you the diversity. This of course Kanchi sari is a very plain sari. The sari that I am wearing is a Gadwal, also has the same principle. This is a cotton body and a silk border and palla. We now come to one of the most complicated weaves in our country. This is a balucheries, again brocade. This is silk on silk. The body is used as a twisted silk, whereas the patterning here is untwisted floss silk. This was prevalent in 18th century, 19th century, 18th, 19th centuries. It died out almost in early 20th century. You see the figures. It's rare to have in a sari figures like this that are woven. This was drawn by draw loom with Nakshaband. It went out. These kalkas, these are kalkas. We saw those mango booties of Banaras and so on. Here too we have. This particular piece is about 80s or so. This is not done on the traditional draw loom with Nakshabandi process or the later Jala process. This is a jacquard process. If you were to see this, the reason how you will know it is a jacquard, you see these threads, you see all those saris, you will not have threads floating like this. You see the tanchoi, you see the other maroon brocade, you will not find. Here you have threads which are floating. This is a jacquard. Okay. This is a story from a miniature painting, Ashtanayaka, Vasaka Sajja Nayika. She is the lover waiting, all ready and dressed up, waiting to meet her lover. This is your Baluchiri, Murshidabad, West Bengal. This is done in the traditional draw loom and patterned with floss silk. We now come to the Central Indian tribal weaves. Yesterday I had mentioned, given you all the details. These are the coarse, thick count saris. This is known as the mu or the face, one end. This is a Sundarmani Pata, and this is a low count cotton sari worn by the Gadaparaja and other tribals of the region, Bastar of Chhattisgarh and Koraput of Odisha. We do not see it is a short width sari. The length will be about 4 meters, but otherwise it is short width sari. Pardon? This is just called brocade. That could be kemkha. This is the Shadika brocade. Okay. This too is there is no zari in it, but I wanted to show you the how the border and the body are attached. That's a Pathani technique, and which is similar technique which is across South India. So there is a similarity of technique too. You know how you weave basically. This sari is worn in two regions, both in Bastar, Odisha. The weavers are similar, Panika, Mirjan. This is a Jharkhand sari. This is the sari that the groom's side gifts to the bride's mother. So this is Me Lugda Pata. It's a mother-in-law sari. Okay, she wears it at the wedding. It's a very prestigious sari. If you see, it is a short width, but it is about 4 point odd, meters. This particular design is specific to these saris. This is I spoke of the low count or coarse cotton. This is 10 count. That is per square inch. You will have 10 threads of warp and 10 threads of weft. This is worn on the Tana loom that I showed yesterday. very basic loom, but it is so sustainable. And each sari, when I spoke to Master Weaver Kapileshwar Mahanto about Koraput Odisha saris, he said people are so particular about the quality of the saris, that one particular sari has to last them at least 2 to 3 years. Otherwise, they will not talk to these people in the heart. They will come and rub if they see them, if the cloth has torn and has not, he showed me, he said they'll rub their feet on the ground. It's practically like your name is mud, the English expression. So they get insulted in the heart. So they're very particular. That is why you have these. And for common people, so, clothing that lasts you for a long time is the most important. You see? So fine clothing is for rich people because it won't last long. I'll just take just 5 more minutes, Michelle. After that I'll be done. This is, speaking of coarse count saris, they were commonly woven and worn. Yesterday I mentioned from ancient times both coarse and fine cotton were worn, because coarse is your daily wear, it will withstand the rough wear and tear. This is a Chettinad sari in South India, in Karaikudi, Tamil Nadu. This too is a coarse count cotton sari. These were refashioned and repurposed, elitified I will say, into silk saris sometime in 2003. They became a big rage. But these thick coarse count cotton saris have gone out. Nobody is weaving them anymore. Now what is interesting is that if you were to see the Koraput tribal sari, they have two pallas, domu. This too has two pallas. All other regions they have only one palla. But in central India they have two pallas. But here in Chettinad, you have two pallas. Two pallas, you can say that you could wear it either way. If one side gets torn, you could, wear the other side. The temples there are the joining of the border and the pallu. Yesterday I showed you Northeast India, I showed you the loin loom image. I couldn't get the shawl because it was too heavy, but I have been able to get a shawl. This is an airy silk shawl. This is known as the Kaziranga shawl. This is woven at home, and you see how spectacular it is. A special shawl with Kaziranga, with those rhinos motifs. You have deers, okay, and this is kind of a ceremonial special shawl and birds. But you have airy shawl which is woven plain and woven in black, threads, designs, which is on loom. This is on loom embroidery. Now Kashmir, I end with Kashmiri cloth. This thing, shawls, they are kani woven and embroidered. These weavers and embroiderers are known as rafugars. Is famous in ancient time. Fibers of wool of sheep, including pashmina. This loom is a short loom. Yesterday I showed you. So it was woven in multiple strips and interlocking twill tapestry with nakshabandha, draw loom, double interlocking twill tapestry. Off-loom embellishment was kani embroidery done by refugers. It is a major export item to the West, and today too it is most coveted. This is a kani embroidered pashmina shawl. This is on an exhibition recently, and that is why I was able to photograph it. Please note the paisley, that butta that we see, this became the French paisley. Okay, look how beautifully it is done. I do not have such a fabulous piece, but what I do have is today's shawl. The material is synthetic wool, but the embroidery is very nice. You have the same paisleys here. You see the dense embroidery, very dense. The shawl becomes heavy because of its denseness. Even though there is damage to the shawl, the embroidery has not gone. you see. So, I was a little very lucky to get this particular shawl for display. Notice the fine stitches. Typically, we associate fine stitches and small stitches, with fragility, and they'll come apart and so on. But feel and look at the back, see the knots, see what kind of stitches are being used. This will give you an idea as to why, Kashmiri shawls were so loved and prized even to this day, because of this kind of an embroidery. And also weaving. Weaving, the Kani embroidery was done so skillfully. It was done both sides, single side and double side. They were exactly the same. There was also time when you would have the other side in a different color. So they were different tricks, and they will have multiple colors in the same, there were different techniques of doing it and all that. So weaving would have been wonderful. Today Kani weaving is done, but it is very expensive, and like I said, takes a lot of time. So does the weaving done by the embroidery done by the refuggers. If they have to do that, imitate that kind of a Kani embroidery, it is. This is, I would say, Kashmiri embroidery now, because but it has very delicate and very dense embroidery, very delicate and dense. Unfortunately, the material is bad. That's a separate issue, but that gives us an idea, as to how it would have been. That's the last sample, and I'm ending with a slide. This is a Gujarati Mughal embroidery, Gujarat. This I have not touched because again we didn't have the time and so on. But this is Ari embroidery, and it was patronized by the royals of Gujarat, and this was a major export item. In fact, when I saw this piece again at a recent exhibition, I couldn't believe that this was embroidery. I tried taking photograph of the stitches, but it was like they were so fine that it looked as if they have been painted or printed. You couldn't make out, but I knew that that was the stitch. You could make out the ridges and all that of the stitches. It was so fine, and this is done by Ari. That is the awl embroidery. The cobblers who use that awl to stitch, it is made with that. No, no, not that. No, not that. It is not similar, because what they do, Garo, is they do it by hand, and they also do it by with awl. There are two ways of doing it, but the stitches is different. There it is satin stitch. Here it is chain stitch. Ari uses only chain stitch, mainly chain stitch it uses. But they were so fine and delicate, I cannot tell you. I have not seen such finer ones ever. And I couldn't take I couldn't take it because they were that fine. It required a more sophisticated camera to take. But yes, Ashdi Lilawala is using Ari to do Parsi Gara saris and all that. But you do have others, a traditional, hand done satin stitch, they are doing. Okay. Thank you very much. We have come to the end.